Hello everyone, and welcome to this deep dive into the architecture of LLM agent workflows. Today, we are exploring a massive paradigm shift in how we build AI systems, moving away from rigid, static templates and evolving toward highly dynamic, runtime graphs. Historically, we treated LLMs as simple, single-prompt engines where you input a prompt and receive an output. But today, LLMs are evolving into executable workflows. Success now requires orchestrating complex interactions across time, seamlessly integrating LLM calls, retrieval, tool use, memory, and verification. Here is a crucial takeaway: if your foundational architecture is weak, that scaffold cannot be rescued entirely just by writing better prompts. We introduce the unifying abstraction for these complex systems, the Agentic Computation Graph, or ACG. Think of this like the intricate gears of a mechanical watch. You have nodes representing instructions, context, tools, and models, and they are all connected by data, communication, and control dependencies. Moving forward, we must treat this workflow structure, which agents are present and how information flows between them, as our primary optimization target. To optimize these structures effectively, we need to separate reusable design from realized runtime behavior. We break this down into three distinct steps. First is the template, which is your reusable blueprint of nodes and edges. Second is the realized graph, which is the specific structural instance actually deployed for a given input query. And third is the execution trace, which is the footprint left behind, including states, actions, and accumulated costs. True optimization is all about balancing the task quality of these traces against their execution cost. What exactly are we optimizing? We generally have three main targets. We can do node-level optimization, which means tuning the internal code or prompts of a single agent while keeping the overall scaffold fixed. We can do graph-level optimization, where we rewind connections or change the overall routing topology. Or, we can use joint optimization, alternating between tuning local configurations and the global structure. This brings us to a fundamental design choice: graph plasticity mode. This represents the spectrum of how much your workflow structure can change at runtime. On the far left, we have none or static, where templates are fixed offline before deployment. Moving to the right, we introduce dynamic layers, select for activating or pruning a fixed supergraph, generate for constructing a bespoke graph from scratch, and finally edit for interleaving execution with structural changes on the fly. Let's look at the static side. Static optimization searches for a single, robust master template offline. The biggest advantage here is verifiability. Because the template is fixed, strong syntax and schema verifiers can be applied safely before you spend money on expensive downstream execution. This approach is ideal for highly repetitive tasks that have strict budget constraints and stable APIs. What if we need a little flexibility? Selection and pruning is the lightest form of runtime adaptation. Here, a fixed supergraph dynamically prunes away redundant agents and communication links based on the specific query's context and difficulty. This matters because it captures major cost savings and token efficiency without risking unconstrained hallucinations, since all validity is inherited from a pre-verified supergraph. Let's look at pre-execution generation. This approach synthesizes a bespoke workflow from scratch for every single input query. An autoregressive generator node looks at the task and builds a specific architecture before execution begins. The trade-off here is clear: you get vastly higher expressivity for diverse, heterogeneous tasks, but it demands flawless schema compliance and strong intermediate evaluators to prevent the system from generating invalid code. This takes us to the extreme end of flexibility, in execution editing. This treats graph mutation as a first-class runtime action. Imagine a workflow running, encountering a tool failure, pausing, and dynamically spawning a new debugger agent to fix the issue. This interleaving of execution with structural change is essential for long-horizon tasks where you simply can't anticipate every obstacle. However, it requires strict budget guards and loop avoidance mechanisms to prevent infinite resource drain. So, how do we safely authorize these changes? Optimization requires evidence, and the signal you choose dictates the safe boundaries of graph mutation. You can use scalar metrics, which align well with end goals but are often noisy. You can use verifiers for dense feedback and hard constraints, unlocking more aggressive mutation safely. You can use preference rankings to stabilize generation. Or you can use traces, which provide high semantic bandwidth explaining why something failed, but carry a risk of hallucination if you lack external validators. Flexibility is not free. As you move from static to select, generate, and finally edit, your expressivity goes up, but so do your runtime costs and your verification burden. Moving toward dynamic graphs explodes the need for explicit stopping rules, budget guards, and token limits. Because of these hidden costs, evaluation must treat the graph as a first-class output. If you only report downstream task success, you are masking the structural costs. For example, two workflows might both succeed, but one might use 50 LLM calls and cost $2 in a messy tangle, while another uses 5 calls and costs 10 cents in a clean, efficient line. Robust evaluation requires measuring efficiency, graph properties like depth and width, and robustness to API drift. How do you match plasticity to unpredictability? If task heterogeneity and environmental uncertainty are both low, stick to static templates. If tasks vary widely in difficulty, use select and prune or generate. If the environment is highly unpredictable with frequent tool failures, you need in-execution edit. The ultimate takeaway here is, don't default to dynamic. Start static, optimize your local prompts, and only add structural plasticity when trace analysis proves that the environment demands it. Finally, let's outline the open problems currently sitting at the frontier of workflow optimization. First is structural credit assignment. Did performance improve because of a clever new edge, a better verifier, or did the system just brute force it by spending more compute? Second is expressivity versus verifiability. How do we statically guarantee the safety of infinite loops and self-spawning agents? And third is continual adaptation. How do these workflows survive inevitable API and tool drift without requiring a complete, offline rebuild? Thank you for joining me on this walkthrough of architecting agentic workflows.